Today we're going to look at the Era, a very terrain-capable, reversible seat four-wheeler from Bumbleride. Bumbleride's been around for a long time, producing mostly three-wheelers, and while this isn't their first four-wheeler, the Era having been preceded by the, in our opinion, vastly inferior Indy 4, it is their first stroller with a reversible seat, which is a very sought-after characteristic for a lot of parents. And in this video then, we're going to give the Era a thorough rundown from top to bottom, exploring its advantages and disadvantages in terms of child comfort, ease of use, performance and mechanics, as well as in relation to which lifestyles and environments it will best suit. And starting off with some stats, the Era clocks in at a little over 12 kilos and folds down to 75 by 33 by 62 centimeters, with the seat attached. It can carry 25 kilos in the seat and 4.5 kilos in the underslung shopping basket. When it comes to child comfort, the Era's seat frame is fixed at a sloped angle, while the seat back itself is adjustable via a draw strap down to an essentially full flat position that's acceptable for newborns, in particular when buttoning up the hidden apron wings to form a newborn cocoon. In terms of the dimensions of the Era's seat, the model has a width of 33 centimeters and a length of 107, which includes both a sufficiently deep baseboard and one of the longest adjustable leg rests on the market. Back support, at 52 centimeters with the seat fully upright, is decent as well, though the length is shorter when the seat is reclined, and with the canopy also flush against the seat back, there may be a bit less than desired headroom for children over 3 to 3.5 years old. Beyond this, while Bumbleride's textiles have certainly improved over the years, they still don't feel quite as luxurious as with some other premium brands within the same price class in my opinion, though they do seem decently durable. And lastly, while the Era's canopy only has the older design of a sun flap for extended coverage, as opposed to the now more common use of an extra portion zippered into the back, it still provides more than adequate shade. Moving on to parent comfort, the Era offers a wide range in terms of handle height, from 66 to 113 centimeters, though, as a side note here, I'm personally not a huge fan of the cork cover. It looks a bit too much to me like particle board, creating an association of unfinishedness, though this is, of course, a matter of personal aesthetics. The Era's shopping basket is one of the weak points on the model, in that, while the size is decent enough, its carrying capacity weight-wise is definitely on the low end for models of this sort, and it's also not that comfortable to access, due both to being somewhat blocked off by a rear frame crossbar, as well as by that relatively long leg rest. When it comes to folding and carrying, the Era is a bit on the clunky side, using two-hand activation mechanisms both for the folding of the chassis as well as for the seat frame, the second of which being somewhat anti-intuitive to access since the triggers are so close to the handle arms. The model's also a little on the heavy side, though not that bad, at least when taken in comparison to similarly terrain-capable four-wheelers on the wider market. When folded, the Era is advertised as having a standing fold, though the fact that the model must first be folded down flat before being brought to a standing position, and even then doesn't stand all that easily, means that it really doesn't. Despite this fumbling, while the model isn't particularly comfortable to carry long distances, it is one of only a few strollers on the current market with this degree of terrain capability to also have a foldable seat frame, which brings down the folded dimensions as a one-piece package to small enough that it's quite suitable for fitting into most car trunks. As far as the overall feeling of using the Era goes, I would say that its most dominant features are its simply built and easy to understand mechanisms, elements like the draw strap for adjusting seat position, its excellent terrain capability, facilitated by the use of 8.5-inch front wheels, air-filled tires, and decent suspension, which allow the model to be used over forest trails and the roughest of cobblestones, and the negative of its handle and handle arms, which feel a bit loose right from the outset, and which flex a bit too much for my liking when tipping or steering, due to being a bit too slimly built for the large welded behemoth of the rest of the chassis, and which, in some circumstances, such as tipping the model up a curb with a heavier child in the reversed and reclined position, make it feel as though they might even break. Alright, moving on to the mechanics of the Era, I'd like to look a little closer at that handle and handle arms, which are a bit less reinforced than they ought to be in my opinion for handling the weight of the rest of the model, and where one part of this is the use of hinged adjustment mechanisms, which are an older and inferior design for front-heavy models like this to the now more common use of telescopic mechanisms, and which are definitely a potential braking area if, for example, the model is regularly used in rough terrain over a longer period with an older toddler in the parent-facing configuration. Then there are the handle arms themselves, which is where most of the flexing can be felt, and where my worries have more to do with steering, due to the flat angling of how they connect to the central folding mechanism. Here, I wouldn't say that the Era is apt to break necessarily, but rather likely to loosen over time from the strain. And also, since the handle arms house wires that activate the central fold, there's also the potential that these wires could become pinched as wear and misalignment occur, affecting the folding mechanism. That being said, for most users, the most that will happen as a result of wear is loosening, and it's important to note that other than the need for more reinforcement in the handle, the general design of the Era is actually quite sturdy, with solid metal elements making up the central folding hub, internal components kept to a minimum across most of the chassis, a lot of areas of the chassis put together with screws, making it easier for the average user to disassemble and swap out elements if necessary, and multiple welded crossbars, giving the model strong horizontal support on the front and rear frames. Moving on down to the rear frame, the Era has decent suspension, a bit on the soft side due to how it's angled, both in the back and the front, but paired well with the model's air-filled tires for handling hiking conditions. The brake system, though, unfortunately, this large bar that presses pins into teeth on the inside facings of the wheels, is not my favorite sort of setup, as in my experience, this design tends to suffer from a few wear problems in the long run, with either the rivets loosening or the plastic wearing down on the plugs that hold the bar in its various positions, which can sometimes lead to the brake bar falling down and engaging when you don't want it to, or asymmetries in getting both wheels to lock properly. When it comes to the wheels themselves, the mechanics of how they connect to the rear frame is strong, and I like the additional suspension that air-filled wheels bring, but the tire type that they use is one that unfortunately tends to puncture a bit more than some other tires on the market, and for a model that is meant to use off-road, where you may be encountering a lot of sharp rocks and stuff, the Era would have really benefited from tires with a raised ridge at the apex, to decrease surface contact, or even, potentially, by offering the choice of foam-filled tires as well for customers who would prefer not to deal with the hassle of swapping inner tubes and stuff. Looking lastly at the front end, I again love the size of the front wheels, the chief feature providing the model with such strong terrain capability, and the suspension is decent here too. Again, a bit on the soft side as a result of the horizontal angle of how it's hinged, but meant to pair with the tires. The Era's swivel locks are quite strong, consisting of mainly metal components, and the front forks are fixed within the housings, creating a very tight fit, unlikely to develop wobble problems in the long run. But it's important to note that the use of a lot of metal here, in particular the fact that the fork axles are run directly through ball bearings inside the housings, makes lubrication an absolute necessity, which means actually unscrewing and opening up the housings themselves on occasion to clean and lubricate the mechanisms properly, due to the risk of rust complicating the replacement of parts when those bearings eventually wear down. So, should you consider getting the Era then? Maybe. While there are definitely a few factors that I'm not super pleased with, the biggest two in my opinion being the somewhat weak build of the handle and the missed opportunity of not providing a larger, sturdier, and more accessible shopping basket, which is one of the few advantages that four-wheeled terrain models can offer over three-wheelers, the reality is that the selection of truly terrain-capable, reversible seat models has been narrowing for a few years now. And the Era then may be a model to consider if you have the following rather specific needs. You need a decently terrain-capable stroller for off-roading or use over particularly rough cobblestones. You feel that a reversible seat is a must, and you need something that can fold down relatively small as a single piece as a result of limited trunk space. In any case, we hope you found this video interesting, and if you did, please subscribe, or even hit the donate button if you're so inclined, as this sort of support really helps us to continue making videos in the future. In addition, if you're currently shopping for a stroller, we have a buyer's guide on our Patreon page, which lists a wide range of models that we recommend, with a lot of technical and lifestyle-related information. You can find it by following the link in the description. Thank you.